Blessings to all, and welcome to another episode of Elevate the Mic. And I'm your host, Max Mupese. Today is a special day. The reason why it's a special day is because we have somebody we consider a legend, somebody we consider a pioneer, and somebody who has paved the way for so many people in the entertainment industry in Montreal. This individual has worked with some of the biggest names you could think of: Destiny's Child, Wyclef Jean, some of the biggest names in R&B and hip hop. So without further ado, let's welcome Ricky D. How you doing, man?
Good to see you, Max. Always a pleasure to see you, my brother.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Let me start by asking, how you feeling today? How you doing?
I'm all right. A little tired, but, it's Saturday.
Right.
Usually it's a day where I just kick back and relax. Having a hectic week, putting together things.
Mm-hmm.
Those Saturdays and Sundays is usually when I do my brunch thing and chill out with the family and everything. But yeah, I'm good.
Taking it one day at a time.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially with the weather, it's not all.
Oh yeah, but, I got my lawn johns on, so I'm okay. I'm covered. I'm covered. I'm prepared.
That's it. Now, for anybody who's watching this for the first time, has no clue who Ricky D is and what Ricky D is about, could you tell us about what inspired you to pursue a career in the entertainment industry?
Well, I didn't really aspire. It just kind of came to me, in terms of, had a friend of mine, close friend, who was a DJ. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't sing, I couldn't dance, I couldn't rap, I couldn't do any of that stuff. So, but I loved, the DJing and the party scene, and I loved the energy that it brought. So I decided I was going to get involved more on the business side of things, and I started handing out flyers and creating concepts and producing shows and everything else. So that's how I got involved in it through him. And he was lazy, and he didn't want to do that part of the work. He just wanted to show up, DJ, get the girls, and go home.
Right.
Where I was a little bit more industrious in terms of what I wanted to do.
Interesting. So you were really doing the groundwork.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't mind it because, in the business I was in, you always want to have a desire to meet people. Mm. If you don't want to meet people, then you can't do what I've done. Because you'll never reach out and say hi to somebody. You'll never reach out and give them a flyer because you'd be too shy and too within yourself in order to want to do it.
Right.
So you gotta have that courage.
That's it. Stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's it. Interesting. And speaking of going through the industry, sometimes you have to realize there's a lot of challenges. Certain things happen, and it does not necessarily go the way you expected, just like in life in general. And what would you say, what are some challenges you're currently facing in your career that is giving you wisdom?
Well, just understanding the industry. When I was in my early days, we didn't really understand what we were doing. Mm-hmm. We were just doing it instinctually, right? There was no textbook, there was no blueprint. It was just, figuring out along our way how to make this hip hop happen, how to make this R&B happen, how to make this reggae happen, right, and so forth, right? So, there was a lot of errors, immigration being one, dealing with the right people, making sure that, you gave your deposits to the right person who was capable of delivering the artist that you requested. Mm-hmm. So, you had to do your due diligence there, understanding who you bring in to the city. Is there a demand for them? Mm-hmm. These are the kind of things. So, we were young. We didn't understand back then. You had things like Billboard, and we would go to the record labels, and they would give us information on CD sales and how this artist is doing up here, even though they weren't being played on commercial radio, right, or any radio per se, except for like CKGM, which was Club 980, which was in the early days, early 80s, And then by the mid 80s, late 80s, CKUT.
Okay. There's a lot of groundwork, a lot of hustling and bustling,
Oh
finding a
yeah,
way.
oh yeah. There was definitely a lot, going around, going to different schools, going to different colleges, universities, attending different events, going outside the nightclubs at 2:30 in the morning, and and minus 10-degree weather, and handing out flyers for the next event. When you could be at home, laying in your bed, laying with your girlfriend.
Right.
And there was many times when my girlfriend didn't want me to get up and go. But hey, this is what I do.
It paid off at the end.
Yeah, I've been blessed enough that, God had provided me an opportunity to build on my confidence and to continue forward.
That's interesting. Now, I want to touch on what you said earlier about booking, right? You said there was a few people you had to think about booking. I was doing some research yesterday, and I realized that before the idea of contracts and writers and all of the above, whenever it comes down to booking an artist, for people who are watching this and not necessarily understanding the context I'm bringing, is that there was times where promoters were inviting artists to their places. Like they would sleep at their, like the artist they would book, the promoter would book an artist, and the artist would sleep at the promoter's house. Did you ever hear about that?
I was, the artists I was building with were artists that were beyond that.
Okay.
There was none of that. Usually when an artist does that, it's because they have a personal relationship
Okay.
with the producer, the promoter, and they'll do it. Sometimes they'll do it because they're hungry to break into that market. So they would be interested in doing it, especially in Montreal back in its heyday, when it was much more of a wide open city for a lot of Anglophone acts coming through.
Yes.
That a lot of these guys from the States and from the Caribbean and from Europe would bend that way if they had to, just in order to get into the market, so their name and their reputation can grow.
Okay.
But I wasn't one of those guys where I would bring artists into my house,
Like, hey,
or come sleep in my apartment and
right.
nah.
Like, hey, you can use my kitchen for a little bit.
No, I didn't get down like that.
Right. That's too much of a hassle in a way sometimes.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it professional. I don't know these guys to that level.
Right.
I'm not just going to let anybody into my home and, say something goes wrong, say they do something wrong. Who's at fault? Me for letting them in, or them for being in there?
That's a great point.
So, I always wanted to keep a certain level of professionalism, whatever we do. That we knew from earlier on that that's not a good look on our end. So the producers I worked with never did that. But I've heard stories of producers who have opened their doors and had people come and stay at their house in order to perform. But it's usually a Caribbean thing, you know what I mean? And you'll find a lot of Caribbean, West Indian artists that would do that because they have a relationship. It's either a cousin, a relative, a close friend of a friend, and they felt very comfortable and at ease, and it usually worked out for them. I've never heard any bad stories of something happening out of that, but that wasn't for me.
Okay. And in an ever-changing music industry, how do you stay relevant and connect with young people?
I go out there and make sure that I'm present. A lot of the younger generation just connect with me, you know what I mean? I make myself personable to them, and I'll go out I don't go out as much as I used to go out, but I do go out for certain events, especially for those who are my allies and are trying to do something significant for hip-hop. But I don't, I used to go out from Wednesday to Sunday for decades, every night. I used to
Scouting, paying attention.
Handing out flyers, looking for new locations, building with other producers, and so forth. So, I did a lot of that. So now, as I've gotten older, I'm more picky about where I'm going to be and where I'm going to go and get out of my bed
Right.
and go down and do that. I don't do that as much as I used to.
The intent matters more.
Yeah, I got to see some potential in whatever it is. And if by me going and helping them out, or by my presence being there, can elevate what they're doing, then I do it for them. But I don't go out as much as I used to.
Got it. Knowing that you're one of the biggest promoters in the city, right? I wanted to ask you, I always thought about this question. I want to ask you, so Evenco recently bought Metro and Fuego Festival. What do you think of the merger, acquisition, and sale of festivals? And do you think it promotes culture?
Evenco is it's unique, and I'll put it to you this way. The people that are at the top end of Evenco started off just like me.
Right.
So their mind is that of an indie promoter mind, grassroots mind. They're not corporate people who went to university for it or, grew up in a corporate mentality. They had to adapt to one because of the dynamics of what they were dealing with. But because they have that, they tend to be a little bit more open than, say, some other producers would be.
Right.
Live Nation's not going to go and put on independent artists unless these independent artists are positioned in order to be the next level of breakthrough artists that are coming through. They have to come with a very strong reputation that, to the record label, to the agent, these guys need to be put on.
Okay.
I think that Evenco will continue to allow a certain amount of independent local artists on it, trying not to really change the formula of what these festivals mean.
Got it.
Will it stay that way indefinitely?
Now that's debatable.
That's to be seen. But for now, I truly believe that they will continue to do that because they're not trying to, reinvent the wheel. They're just, trying to take this festival along with all their other festivals and continue to make Montreal into, basically the number 1 or number 2 festival destination in North America.
So it does promote culture in a way as well.
Yeah, they're not into promoting culture. They're into promoting a business. When you say their number 1 mandate is not there in order to promote a culture. It's to have a business that works. And their formula is to bring shows that will bring people out. If they happen to run into a show that has more of a heavy cultural leanings, and yet have a certain level of popularity, they'll do it.
Right.
But they're not going to do a show because a show is just
Promoting.
plain cool. And there has to be some merit behind it. There has to be some, bodies behind that artist that they're bringing down, along with them being cool.
Makes sense. Now, can you give us an insight into the life of a promoter and the reality that most people don't know about?
Well, it's show business. And that's sometimes people forget that without the show, there's no business.
Yeah.
Without the business, there's no show. So a lot of people tend to see the show, not the business. And when they do look at the business, they'll look at, oh my gosh, this show's expensive. Oh my gosh, it's $50. I was only willing to pay $20.
Right.
or it's $100. I was only willing to pay 50. But what they don't realize is that there's a lot of costs behind producing these types of events, and everybody wants to get paid, and everybody wants to get paid top dollar. So how is that going to work out? The only way you can pay these people is if the people who are buying the tickets come.
Right.
Right? If nobody comes, then yeah, you can go in your pocket and pay them, but it's going to be a loss, and you're not going to be able to continue to do this type of business because the business can't sustain itself.
Right. You're using your pocket money, and then you're just going to have to go back to the bank account.
And, there's only so much you can do of that before you get tired of that. You go broke. And, trying to help a culture and help a business that you have no business being in.
And you don't want to be labeled as a janky promoter.
Well, yeah, sometimes I've seen guys being forced into situations where, they end up becoming a janky promoter because they just didn't foresee that this potentially can be a failure. And they overstep their means and their abilities in order to produce an event like this without seriously understanding what they're doing.
Got it. And can you tell us about your experience of working with this new generation and artists, as well as the lessons you've learned? Because there's a few names we could think of. Tizo worked with Enima at one point, and a lot of the new quote-unquote artists.
What do you want to know?
So could you tell us about your experience working with them and
a lot
the
of
lessons
them,
you've learned?
a lot of them are great. They're great individuals, great lyricists, great rappers. Who have managed to find a way to get people's attention. And will continue to. There's always, the universe always selects a few. Who they may be, it's hard to predict. The music industry has developed, formulas and algorithms and all this other stuff in order to predict things or to have an understanding of what things are. But the reality of it is that nobody truly knows who's going to go forward and who's not.
Right.
Everybody comes out with, hopefully an equal share of opportunity to develop their product. Right? So, for example, if you're a great lyricist and I'm a great lyricist and we're doing our things individually, now it comes down to opportunity, the timing.
Right.
Who do I have in my camp?
That's very important, yeah.
Who's endorsing me? You see it every day, right? You'll watch like the NCAA and you'll see guys coming out. And before they even played college basketball, they were already being positioned and recruited in high school.
Right.
So from an early age, they were designated as one who could potentially go through. And during that time, certain key gatekeepers along the way who recognized them will co-sign them, and by them co-signing them, it gives them a greater opportunity to go forward in their career. It's the same thing with music, right? If everybody in your hood is saying you're the man,
yes,
and therefore you will be the man, to a certain degree. But you could be the best rapper, and a guy could come out of nowhere whose skill set and whose abilities are not even close to yours, yet they got the cosign and you didn't.
It's that social proof.
It's, so it just all depends on how you know, what life has in store for you. You know, you just got to throw your dice out and see what comes out of it. That's ultimately what you're doing, right? You put it out in the universe, and then the universe decides if it wants to mess with you or not.
What I get is that there's no actual secret. Well, there's no specific guarantee way of going about it.
No.
It's just gotta
Certain things you need to have. You know, if you're a producer, you need to be a great producer, and you have to consistently put out product that your name will spread among those who are buying your product, who are enlisting in your services in order to get a great sounding, you know, record or whatever, you know. And by doing that, if I'm working with you, you're working with the same person, he's working with the same person, and we're all saying that this guy's music is outstanding.
Right.
Well, guess what? He might start working with that person over there. He might start working with other people that are not in his immediate circle, but it'll increase his presence in the industry.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
And bring them to people that, you know, maybe you start working with somebody from France, because somebody like yourself who might have a friend of a friend in France who might like what they did with you and decide that this is a person they want to work with. That in itself brings them a certain amount more of credibility, which exposes him a little bit more, you know, to other players who could become bigger or who are bigger or going to become bigger and more successful than the last person.
Okay. Now, it's been said for years that today's hip-hop generation needs more guidance from mentors. What do you think about that?
Hip hop is a music. All forms of music are solitary to a certain degree. You know, the people who are creating it, the people who are voicing it, tend to be self-absorbed within themselves.
Right.
Music is selfish.
Right.
To a certain degree. Before you can share with anybody, you got to be able to share with yourself. And if you lack those qualities, you'll never be a great performer, or you'll never deliver a great product, because you have to be able to please yourself, and then from pleasing yourself, you can please others.
That's it.
Right? So it takes a lot of dedication and initiation from yourself. It takes a lot of confidence, and it takes a lot of... Some people are misguided on their confidence. Some people are delusional because they think that they really have it when in fact they don't. But who's to say that? You know, we've seen artists throughout the world who have come out who had minimal talent at the beginning and ended up becoming Hall of Fame performers, you know, along the way. So, you know, how do you quantify that, you know? You just have to continue to do what you're doing, and hopefully you will increase your base of people who are willing to champion you and who believe in you.
Got it. So all of there's many factors that go into this.
Yeah,
this
the
whole
most
game.
important thing is, you know, hip hop is a music where it's really, you know, where are you from? Who are you representing? It's more of that than say rock or country, or, you know, these musics tend to, they have it too, you know, country acts. If you're from Nashville and you're from the South, you know, or you're from the regions, the suburbs, beyond the suburbs,
Right.
you tend to have more credibility as a country artist than you would if you grew up in Brooklyn, you know.
Right. You're not necessarily speaking to that core audience for the most
Right.
part. Yeah.
Even though in Brooklyn there could be a huge amount of country folks listening to country music, But because it's not really known as a hotbed
Right.
of that music, you know, at one time Montreal was known as a hotbed for indie music.
Right.
So groups like Arcade Fire and these guys were able to come out because you had, you know, write-ups in Billboard and different trade magazines then talking about the indie scene in Montreal and how dynamic it was, to the point it was rivaling New York City, which then made a lot of A&Rs and other people in the industry come and try to seek out the talented ones here.
Got it. Okay. Now, speaking of Montreal and its culture, could you tell us what, or how do you draw inspiration from this diversity, this diversity at your events? So basically, if I rephrase it, Montreal has a rich cultural tapestry, right? And how do you draw inspiration from this diversity at your events?
I don't really draw. Like, maybe I just don't understand. Say that again.
Yeah, so Montreal has a rich cultural tapestry.
Okay.
And how do you draw inspiration from this diversity at your events? Because there's so many cultures that you could, you know.
I don't draw from them.
Okay.
I don't. I draw from the artists.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, ultimately, it is the artist who's bringing the people in,
Right.
not I.
Mm.
I am just there as a facilitator to make sure that the fan who's unaware that his favorite artist or her artist
Right.
is coming true, that they're aware of it. So I try to increase the knowledge that this artist is coming true, and it's up to you as the fan to connect with your favorite artist in order to come out. That's what I do. I don't really draw from them because every time I do a show, the crowd is different to a certain degree, you know.
Okay.
There's core people who are just lovers of all hip-hop music, and then there's those who are like a Mos Def from a Talib Kweli, or like a Busta Rhymes, you know, from somebody else, an LL Cool J. You know, like, and not everybody come out like a Slick Rick, you know. There's people that are gonna come to Slick Rick that would not go to a Lil Yachty show.
That's it.
But there are some in Lil Yachty that would come to a Slick Rick and vice versa because they love hip hop. And they love everything that has to do with it. From the music to the culture that surrounds the music to the style of dressing. You know, I still see guys out there that are wearing Carl Kanai.
Hey.
You know what I mean? Like,
Does
straight
not
up.
go out of style.
Not all of them have that, like, that hipster look, right? And not all of them are into that. But some of them are still rocking the Carl Kanai, the Echo, and you'd be like, whoa.
Right.
You still out there?
Platinum Fubu.
Yeah. And, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's what they're into. They're stuck in that genre of music, and that's what they appreciate. And those are the people that I really embrace.
Okay.
I really embrace them because they're true blue music lovers of the genre of what they like. Just like I love a metalhead.
Right.
Who just loves his metal music, and that's all he listens to.
Dedicated.
He follows it. He wears his rock t-shirts. He got his skinny jeans on. He dresses to the code, and he hasn't changed in the last 40, 50 years.
It's a lifestyle.
And you have a new generation of kids that are coming up that are adopting that because they realize there's power within that. There's power within not only the music, but everything that surrounds it. And it gives them a sense of identity.
That's good. That's good. So I have a few more questions, a few last questions.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to young aspiring promoters, and especially those that are trying to make a mark in the industry?
just keep doing what you got to do. You know, believe in your craft, understand what you're doing, try to put together music if that's what you do,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because not everybody has to be a rapper, not everybody has to be a singer, but try to put together whatever you're doing so that it makes sense, right, to those who are listening. You know, you could be on the fringe, but, you know, being on the fringe doesn't mean that many people are going to connect to you at the beginning.
True. Mm-hmm.
So if that's what you're into, then you have to have a very strong belief in what you're doing and realize that there might not be a commercial element to what you're doing at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
But if you truly love what you're doing, somebody will recognize it. It doesn't mean that everybody will, but somebody will.
Got it. So last question. Look into the future. What do you want people to know about you? And what do you want your legacy to be for the next generation?
That's a good question. You know, what do I want my legacy to be?
Yes.
Phew. Just a guy who went out there and did his thing. You know, a guy who went into this as a lover of music, as a lover of the industry,
Right.
who understood that no matter where I land in this industry,
Mm-hmm.
I had a good time flying to land at that spot. You know, everybody wants to be at what they perceive as the top of the top. But my top and your top could be two different tops, right? We get so preoccupied in what we think is the standard, but the real standard is within yourself. And to find your comfort zone and to become humble by what you've done and what you continue to do. And to understand that you don't need other people to verify that for you.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to believe in it within yourself that what you do for the love of it, you do it for the passion, you do it to make a living off of it. Because you've come to a point where you should be able to make a living as much as love it, as much as support it. You know, unfortunately, in the world of entertainment, there's so many people who want to get in that there's only so many, you know, places. And then you're seeing, you know, a lot of the shit that's coming out of the States right now with all of these cults
Right.
and all this other stuff. But you know, that stuff is real because there's only so many spots. It's like musical chairs. There's only
Right.
so many chairs to fill, but there's just so many people. So how do you filter? Right? So some people go to the extreme lengths of doing things in order to filter out those who really truly want it and are willing to do anything for it, from those who just look at it as, yeah, I like it and I'd like to continue in it. Right? So you just, you know, in the case of myself, I believe that, you know,
You got to be cut from a certain cloth.
yeah, you know, I continue to do what I do because of that cloth that you mentioned.
Yes.
You know, I came from a neighborhood where I was hungry to build my confidence, to show that I had a purpose out here. You know, not everybody, you know, who wants to just go to school and come out, work 9 to 5 and call it a day. Some people want to live more of a, and there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
Because if that's within your comfort zone and that's what you want to do, then that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's meant to, sit up there and wonder where their next meal or their next check is coming from. They want that consistency. In the entertainment world, it's getting tougher and tougher because as we become more automated, less opportunities for human beings to be involved. Less humans are needed at the end of the day. Less opportunities. Look at that whole AI stuff, right?
Right.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good.
Look what's happening with that, where they had to go and strike. Okay, so they had to go and strike because they wanted to make computer-generated individuals like yourself, right, and take away his job, her job, your job, and next minute you got these AI-generated things where now
It's taking over.
right. So what happens to you now? You become unemployed. So what are they going to do with you? They'll reduce the amount of jobs that are there, and people will have a tougher time surviving in that industry. So what you saw with the whole strike business and everything was people fighting for the future.
Yeah, it's real.
For your future, for all these people's futures, to give them an opportunity. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Technology, it will happen because, if somebody can save a buck, they're going to do it. Okay? So you can't sit up there and worry about all of that.
Inevitable.
But like I said, my legacy is here irregardless if nobody remembers it or everybody remembers it. My role right now is to lend as much of my credibility that is fading to those who can use it to activate their careers, to give them that cosign that they desperately need in their pursuit of their careers.
It's great.
That's as much as I can do. Unfortunately, there's not many producers anymore. It's becoming a very corporate thing.
Right.
It's becoming, those who have the money and those who have the locations to afford. And that's the new generation. Like, when you go and you look at San and Venco, right? They're hiring, 21, 22, 23-year-olds coming up fresh out of university, giving them $20,000, $22,000 a year, providing them with an algorithm, right? And then they go and they mine your artistic knowledge of what you see that's out there. Combining a human element with a computer-generated element in order to pick the artists who will have the most impact.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. That's a brand new. It's a new concept.
Well, it's been there. It's just that it hasn't been revealed to the public.
Hey.
So when you go and you work for them, you're not only, working on site, but you're taking different algorithms and you're looking at them to see how they're doing. Sort of a throwback to when I was coming up and we would have CD sales.
Okay.
We would look at it and say, okay, we'll call up Warner Music, Busta Rhymes. How's Madonna doing? How many singles has she sold?
Right.
How many CDs have she sold? Oh, she sold 5,000 here in Montreal. 5,000. Okay, based on 5,000, how many percentage of that do we think would come out and see her? And then that would then determine how viable she would be here in terms of a performance.
Okay.
So when you had this kind of information, it wasn't just, I heard that Madonna chick is hot,
Right.
and she'll do good. But you back it not only with that gut feeling of what the streets are talking about, but you back it
Data.
by the data that goes with it in order to support. Sometimes the data's wrong. Sometimes you can have an artist. I've had artists in the past like a Coolio who was charting everywhere, was #1 on the billboards, #1 on Much Music, #1 on Music Plus, #1 in CD sales, was playing on French commercial radio like C'est Quoi, C'est Quoi, and all these others, playing on the Mix 96, the Virgins here also. You would think that if I brought this artist here, sell out. We brought the artist here, the artist flopped.
Hey.
And it wasn't from a lack of promotion. It just happened to be that there was a different type of thing. So you had sort of like what I call the Coolio effect, I coined it, where blacks thought he was too soft.
Wow.
And whites thought he was too hard.
Interesting.
So neither one of them came out to see him.
Hey, the Coolio effect.
Right.
So we always say last question, but I would really want to end off with this one. You have $1 million budget, right? You choose to book 2 artists. God rest their soul, Tupac or Biggie. Why? And why?
I want to book both of them, or I want to book one of them.
If you had the choice, one of them.
Well, I wouldn't want to book either one of them.
Okay.
And yeah, they've had a certain amount of influence, but I think a lot of their influence has been overrated and have been
You think
hyped
so?
up. Yeah, for consumption,
Okay.
to sell records, to produce, a certain element. But at the end of the day, there's artists out there that contribute just as much to the hip hop world, like a Nas.
Right.
Then these guys had their moment. Why are we sitting up there talking about dead rappers? What do I care about a dead rapper? How am I going to impact their lives? I can't. They're dead.
Right.
But I can impact a Nas life because he's living. So it's just a lot of garbage when people set that up, and that's just
like
the,
holding on.
that's just the record labels, exploiting somebody's brand in order to continue to make a buck off of them. What do I care about an Elvis Presley now, other than he had great music?
It's the past.
Right? He's dead. It's not the past. He's dead.
Yeah.
If he was still alive, that's a different story. But he's dead. How are you going to, sit up there? Yes, you recognize the music, but who's profiting off of the dead man's music?
That's a good point.
A lot of times it's not the families of the people that are responsible for the music. It's the record labels and the corporations who put that money into their pockets and put it into those who have stocks in their businesses.
Yeah, and even when they say, though, like for Michael Jackson, for instance, when they say the people who hold the catalog, they quote unquote associated with his family. However, we don't necessarily know if it's actually his family who owns the catalog. So,
at the end of the day, there's a lot more great artists that are alive and kicking that deserve their flowers now, not when they're dead. And deserves the recognition of moving forward. But the industry has created these individuals who, in my opinion, they're dead. in order to continue to perpetuate and to make a buck off of them, when they should be focusing on the new generation of heroes and gods that are out there that musically deserve their attention while they're still living, not when they're dead.
Hey. Well, thank you for another episode, man.
No problem.
It was
man.
a pleasure talking to you and getting all this information. And more success and more power to you, Ricky D.
Thank you, my brother.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, come for you. You know that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.